Dreams. A dream is a wish your heart makes. I am a dreamer. For a dreamer is one who can only find his way by moonlight, and his punishment is that he sees the dawn before the rest of the world. Dreaming is an act of pure imagination, attesting in all men a creative power, which, if it were available in waking, would make every man Dante or Shakespeare. What is a dream? The transient power that cometh near the midnight hour, to carry me to pastures new and bid my anxious fears adieu. Dreams are incursions into the limbo of things, a semi-deliverance from the human prison. We all dream. We do not understand our dreams, yet we act as if nothing strange goes on in our sleep minds. When we all fall asleep, where do we go? Dreams have been with us since before we were able to describe them. From ancient humans dreaming of visitations from the gods to your embarrassing dreams about showing up to school naked. Dreams seem to be a universal human experience that can be surreal and real at the same time. But what are dreams? Are they merely a way for the subconscious to parse out information and desire? Or are they the threshold dimension outside time and space? Some dreams stick with us for life, and others slip away in the seconds we wake. In this episode, we look at dreams and what they bring to the human experience.
The program you are about to hear is fiction, science fiction. We make no guarantees, however, how long it will remain fiction, fiction, fiction.
All right, slumbering salutations, everybody out there, and all you cognonauts. This is Exofathom, the show that dares to explore the outer reaches of understanding. I am your host, Nick, and I am here, as always, with my lovely co-host, Ayla. How you doing, Ayla?
I'm doing good. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. And we have back our resident co-host and expertise in all things fun and interesting, Mike. How are you doing, bud?
Oh man, that's so kind. I'm doing good, thank you. It's good to be on.
Definitely, man. Well, it's good to have you back. And yeah, folks, we're going to get into some cool conversations this evening. We really hope you enjoy these talks we've been having. Please, before we start, please check us out at Thinkering.space. There you can catch all of our podcasts, from the Thinkering Report to Exofathom to If Numbers Can Talk. And in the future, we will be having, I believe, Jose's podcast, The Plank with Joe, on there as well. So stay tuned. We got a lot of fun, interesting content for you guys there at Exofathom. Oh my gosh. Over at Thinkering.space. You can also reach us over at our Facebook site at Thinkering Talks, and that would be Thinkering Talks as well on our YouTube page. Please visit these places, give us a like, give us a comment, leave us some feedback. We're still a new channel, new network, so you'll have the luxury of actually interacting with us when you do leave comments. So again, thank you so much, you guys, for listening, and let's just jump right into it. So you guys, we're going to be talking about dreams. This is kind of a meaty subject, and honestly, when I was doing the research for this, I realized that this isn't going to be just one episode. It seems like we're going to have to visit this topic maybe in the future as well, because when I got done with this initial show in the show notes, I realized I missed a myriad of really interesting, cool concepts that we need to come back to. So I will probably bring those up towards the end of the episode to tantalize you guys to listen to us in the future. But let me just start off by asking my lovely co-hosts here. Ayla, do you remember the last dream you had? in recent memory?
Oh, in recent memory, that's a tough one. I haven't been sleeping very well, but I do remember that one of the more recent dreams I had was this woman. She got shot, and I was trying to like hold back the wound, and I kept asking. I mean, of course, this is probably topical because there was a cop, and I asked him to call 911, and he was just being stubborn. But it was kind of comical too because he was kind of being stubborn. Like I was asking for him for like a ketchup packet for my burgers. Like, there was like no hustle, no concern, just like nothing. And so I'm trying to like put out this situation, and I think I was just scrambling the whole time, which has to do with my email inbox, if I were to be really honest, colored with the little topical news stuff. As I think just everything just seeps into your brain. But yeah, I was trying to think about it, and I think that was the last I had, which it figures I only remember the scary ones too. So
right, those do tend to stick with us. Mike, what was the last dream that you remember?
Well, mine is I guess a bit more mundane. It's probably horrifying. A programming task was the last dream I had.
Oh man.
Yeah, like yeah, a work task where like in my dream, I'm just working through possible solutions, and that was the whole dream. Like I found the right one at the end, and it ended up being used in real life and working, which is interesting. But that was the last dream I had that I can remember.
Yeah, sounds like you were working out an issue in your brain.
Yeah, probably.
Probably. Actually, I can sympathize with that because lately, and actually probably in my most recent memories of dreams, they've all been also quite mundane. Bridging on the maybe just frustrating, because Ayla, I can definitely relate to that sentiment of wanting something to be happening and then it just keeps on not happening. That seems to be a reoccurring phenomenon in my dreams as well. The best way I could illustrate it for you guys is like if I fight, I want to, or in my dreams, I want to fight somebody. I always end up swinging as hard as I can for my fist to only just glance their face.
that's the worst.
It's just never, no matter how hard I try to throw my hands at somebody, it always just glances right off of them, or it's like a little tap on the face. Then you end up just looking like the little Scrappy Doo trying to fight monsters.
No, I get it.
Those.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm reminded of the dreams where you're trying to run and like you're running as fast as you can, and it's like 1 hour. It's like, why can't I go? It's the worst.
You get like that physical sensation of like your legs not working either, and it's just really strange.
And it's like the air is jello.
You can almost feel the anxiety in the dream, where it's like, why isn't this working? I've actually had dreams like that. It's like I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I have to be dreaming because this isn't working at all.
Yeah, I remember because in the dream I was looking at this officer and I'm like staring at him and I'm just like, do you not see it? It literally looked like he was just standing in a park admiring the trees, like he's just chilling. And I'm over here and I just like couldn't understand why, like what was going on, and that frustration and like, then you wake up and you're all like flustered for the whole morning because you're just like, ah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why I don't take naps during the daytime, because you do not want to know me when I wake up. That's for sure.
I can attest to that.
Yeah, naps.
It's never
not a good napper.
Yeah, when you go to sleep during the daytime and then you wake up and it's kind of twilight outside, you're like, what the hell happened? Where am I?
Can I just go back to sleep? Is that an option?
Sometimes you can. That's the best ticket. You better just go right back to sleep. You might as well just sleep 16 hours that day.
I felt so betrayed one time. I fell asleep like around 3:30 or 4, and I was like, Nick, wake me up, around like 6 or so. And I guess he couldn't wake me up. Like I was just out. So I woke up around 9:30 or 10 and just, you're just kind of like, oh, like, what am I? Because you can't, right? Like you want to go back to bed good like 4 or 5 hours. Like you're up and that was a tough day.
Yeah, it's awful.
No,
It is. Really
where
tough.
I've found though, like in the morning, I guess getting back to like mundane dreams, I guess mundane naps. In the morning, if I'm facing like a particular coding issue, I've found that like a nap in the middle, like if I just take a nap at lunch, I'll actually reapproach the problem from a different point of view. And that's been the only time where naps have been helpful. Other than that, it's just like, why am I here? What am I doing?
Right.
Oh yeah. No,
Well, I
I'm
can
a firm
certainly-
believer. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I could see that. Go ahead, Alan.
Oh, okay. So I think there's a small delay. But yeah, I was just gonna say I'm a firm believer that if you're working too hard at a problem, to just take a minute. You could take a nap, you could just walk away, but I swear, the minute you like let it rest and come back, you always figure an easier way out of it.
Yeah, and like,
It's like you have to get the subconscious to work on it a little bit.
Definitely, it finds like the simpler subconscious solution.
Yeah, yeah. It's instead of a straight line, it goes through space and time or something. I don't know. I was trying to be cool.
Like
you're cool. Don't
You know what I
worry.
mean? Like, you know, when you have the paper and then they like fold it and they're like, aha, like this is the faster way.
Yeah, that's what I said. The visualization of a wormhole in movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally.
Totally.
No.
All right. Well, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this conversation. I have a little bit of a intro, and then I'm going to ask you guys a couple questions. We'll open up the conversation. Then we're going to get into a little bit of information throughout the ages, and an example of a more indigenous culture's view on dreams, and then a contemporary view on dreams. And then we're going to have a little bit of fun with the, let's see, the Hall study that talks about the correlations between 3,000 dream reports. We'll wrap it up. But let's just go right into it. So, boom, where are we? There we are. A dream succession of images, ideas, emotions, and sensations that usually occur involuntarily in the mind during certain stages of sleep. The content and purpose of dreams are not fully understood, although they have been a topic of scientific, philosophical, and religious interest throughout recorded history. Dream interpretation is an attempt at drawing meaning from dreams and searching for underlying messages. The scientific study of dreams is called one-irology, which is an interesting word. Opinions about the meanings of dreams have varied and shifted throughout time and culture. Many endorse the Freudian theme of dream, that dreams reveal insight to hidden desire and emotions. Other prominent theories include those suggesting that dreams assist in memory formation, problem solving, or a product of random brain activity. So it's kind of interesting that we got into the kind of two parallel thoughts of what dreams are right away. And that's kind of going to be the theme of our conversation. One school of thought might say that dreams are about desire and more abstract and more surreal. Others would say that, like Mike's example, of taking a nap during the daytime, only to find out that he was wrestling, had an answer when he woke up, that you're actually processing information during those moments where you can shut your brain off. Ayla, what do you think dreams are personally? What do you ascribe to one idea or another?
Well, I definitely don't have a firm idea of what they are. I think that I'm very much open to them being a number of different things, and I love a lot of the theories out there. But, you know, I think it has to do something with the way that the different sides of the brain work. So like one side is very linear and very logical, and I think that's kind of where we rest most of the day. And then I think the other non-dominant side kind of wakes up at night, and maybe it's like your brain trying to exercise the other side. And in doing so, like with my extreme, you can come up with solutions, or you can just entertain fears and feelings and memories and things like that. So I, some level, it's the brain just doing its thing and exercising. But then I also was listening to a podcast about lucid dreaming and remembering all of our talk about the gateway experience. I wonder if it's also the subconscious into what the other side won't let it think, right? So, like, we're pretty rigid in our understanding in our waking day. At night, you can kind of be a little bit more loosey goosey with it. And so I think maybe that allows you to access some other realm or something, whatever else is out there.
Yeah, certainly. I would totally agree with that. I think that maybe there is a little bit of both. I think that in my perspective, maybe it is a little bit of both. But Mike, what do you think?
I do think it's both. As far as like you have a very practical use for dreaming, like problem solving, memory formation, and I think like Ayla said, once you lose that rigidity, like the dreams that have had the most impact on me spiritually and philosophically have been very abstract dreams. And so I definitely think it's a bit of like that subconscious coming out to play. But yeah, no, I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, I could. That's I assumed we would all probably have the similar answers to that one. So that question wasn't exactly as compelling as I probably should have made it. But I think it's an important thing to think about sometimes. We did dreaming for granted, I think, most of the time, especially in our current society and culture. I think we don't really keep very much room in society for dreams, which is interesting to me because there are societies, one we will be talking about momentarily, that basically revolve their entire reality around dreams, or at least incorporate them more. Now, I know, Ayla, you have a background in indigenous religious practices. Is there anything that stands out to you in your culture as far as dreaming goes?
Well, my mom, from a very early age, always loved to talk about dreams. And for us, depending on how, like, what's the word, like traditional, I guess you would say you are, there is dream meaning. So, let's say you dream of an owl. That's one of the markers of, like, well, give it, burn some sage, and then in 4 days, hope that you don't get bad news. And then you can have spirit animals pop up, and they kind of have like meanings, that'll kind of come through. So I know there's that element. And then, I would say that sometimes during ceremony, you can have, I don't know, visions, as it's been called. But sometimes you do fall asleep, and then you dream during there, and you might only be asleep for like an hour, and then you wake up and like medicine man fanning you with the feather, and you're like, oh, what happened? And you remember your dream really vividly. So I guess it would be very much of a gray area in that respect. And I hate using the word vision. Like, there's this movie Thunderheart, and well, anyway, there's a funny scene about visions. Like, natives, it's a weird word. I think like it's been kind of co-opted, but I still at the same time, like, I don't know what else you call it. Just that idea of something that didn't really originate from you, and it like presented itself, and so you take note and interpret from there.
Yeah, I mean, that's very cool, and I think it's interesting as we're going to talk about the Aboriginal culture. I think there is a clear line in which ancient and more indigenous cultures viewed dreams as to in juxtaposition to more contemporary cultures and cultures. And I'm wondering if there is if there is a downside to being part of a society that doesn't put enough emphasis on dreaming. Mike, what do you think?
Yes.
Yeah, Mike.
Yes.
My one word answer would be yes.
Yeah, I'm really just throwing you guys softballs here. Sorry.
No, you're
that.
fine. Because I was just gonna get into personal dreams, so I'm trying to relate this conversation. So maybe in my early 20s, I started to dream of a red door with no handle, and it was sitting on top of like a very vivid vision or visual dream. It was sitting on top of a cliff, like up in the sky, and behind it was like a city and some water with a lot of pretty lights underneath. Years later, I would have a dream about a black dog chasing me through a unfamiliar hotel. And an acquaintance showed me a way to get rid of this black dog by turning on the sink. And as the dog jumped to attack me, it turned into smoke and went into the faucet. Even though the water was pouring out into the drain, it went into the faucet.
That's some it stuff.
Yeah. And now looking back on it, kind of giving those dreams memory or those dreams meaning, I think that red door was like my subconscious space, and then that black dog was just all of the I don't know, like the nightmarish parts of me, like the darker sides of me, and
shadow side.
Yes, the shadow side of myself. And that when it got into that faucet, I think it actually poisoned the entire city, and that entire city being my brain or being my sense of self. And
which is interesting because you tried to control it by turning the faucet on, and yet
it didn't work. And I think if our society would kind of accept the more mystical arcs, because you see I think it's a product of science and Western rational thought that like these crazy abstract dreams have nothing to do with me. They're just something out there. And so I think if our society paid more attention to dreaming and kind of gave it more value spiritually, we can start to, it can be like another tool in the psychologist's toolkit, so to say, or the healer's toolkit, whether it be a priest, a shaman, a psychologist, a friend. I think if we paid more attention to dreams, we could help each other a lot more.
Definitely. Yeah, Ayla, do you have anything to add about that?
Oh, well, I love Jung for that reason. He has like a whole series of books about dreaming and dream interpretation, because I think, like some people do make it a practice to talk about dreaming in their therapy work and like especially in trauma work and stuff. And I think it's really interesting, the concept of symbology, because you can have a dog feature in your dream, and somebody who's trying to interpret it or help you bring meaning to that dream is going to ask you, like, what do you think of dogs? Does this remind you of a specific dog? Did the dog have a name? Did it make a sound? And like one of the things my mom used to always ask me when I would tell her my dreams was, what were you wearing? Because sometimes you would look down in a dream and you realize like you're not wearing modern day clothes, or you're dressed as someone completely different. So it's kind of interesting when you start peeling back the layers and thinking, well, was I the person dreaming, or was I dreaming of someone else? What time was it? What year, and all that kind of stuff. So I think, like there's so much richness, and I think that diving into dreams dives into your sense, right? Like this is what your brain is choosing to focus on in your nighttime life. So in your waking life, to bring light on it and kind of dig a little deeper, I think, it's almost like a key to kind of figure out what's going on inside.
Yeah. Well said.
Yeah.
Definitely. And so, Mike, that dream about the red door, is that your earliest dream you can remember, or is there something earlier that you can remember?
Oh dear. We're gonna go down the rabbit hole. Oh dear.
No, let's go.
My earliest dream has to be of the. I don't know if it was a dream. It has to be of the shadow lady or my shadow passenger. If I start to, I'm just gonna sound crazy and just allow it. From as long as I can remember, there's always been sightings of shadow people for me, specifically a very tall shape. In my 20s now, I've kind of discerned it to be feminine in nature and shape, but I can't really tell the true form of it. But one night I'm asleep and I feel a brush across my face. And I relegate this to dream because it's the only way for it to sound reasonable, I guess, if I told it to somebody else. And I open my eyes and I just see nothing but like pitch blackness. And then the thing moves away from me backwards in a straight line, but in a way that is faster than a human can run. And it was more or less floating. But it flew back, and at the time to the right of where it flew back to was a kitchen. It went into the kitchen and then disappeared. And then I fell asleep or I woke up, but that's the earliest thing that I can remember that I can call a dream.
Do you know like around what age you might have been?
Maybe 8 or 9.
Okay.
Maybe somewhere between like 7 and 10 would be like a good age gap or age range.
Still have a foot in both worlds. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, definitely. I think it's interesting because I do definitely believe that children, especially up into a certain age, have the ability to see both sides of reality. And so, yeah, that's why I think they have such vivid imaginations and they talk to things that don't seem to be there. It's because they still haven't solidified in this reality yet. They still have a little bit of wherever they were before. And yeah, it's interesting to me that, you have a dream where it's just kind of like this spectral sort of amorphous almost embodiment of your side, but also the concept of darkness, which is the most primal fear known to man. Incidentally, my first remembrance of a dream has something similar as well. Interestingly enough, it's a reoccurring dream that I would get as a kid whenever I had a fever. So anytime I was sick, which, happened at least a few times a year, I would get this dream, and it would be me in complete pitch darkness, completely black. I can't see any part of myself. I feel like I exist, but I can't really be sure. And all I can hear is this faint thumping, gradually crescendos to a cacophonous level that obviously starts, makes me start crying, and then I'm really upset because I can't escape the sound anywhere. And I would always wake up falling my head off. And so, yeah, that's not exactly the best memory or first memory of a dream, but it is interesting because that happened around the same time. And I think I lost those dreams around 10, 11. And I wonder if it's because, up until that point, you still have kind of this thin shield from between you and the other world per se.
Oh, God, I hope the other world isn't like that, though. Jeez, that sounds frightening.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a future dream, so it wasn't going to be fun.
It could be frightening in this world, but in the other world, maybe since you're only catching like shadows of it, it's fine. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. That's
just a Burning
Man. Yeah. What about you, Ayla? Do you have a dream that you would count as one of your first?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I'm really surprised I can't think past this. But basically, when I was a kid, and I'm trying to think like what age, it was before 4th grade, maybe 2nd grade, 3rd grade. My uncle was in a bad car accident, and so he was in a coma for a really long time. Well, not really long, probably like a week. It's like that gray area where the doctors are like, oh, maybe they'll wake up, and then it gets in that red area where they're like, maybe he won't. And so I remember having this very, very vivid dream. His name was Kenneth, and we were by a truck, and I was bouncing a ball, and then I saw him walk from behind the truck, and he said, "Hey, Ayla, throw it to me," and we just played catch. And I remember waking up, and I was so proud of myself. I walked right up to my mom, and she's just devastated, and I'm like, "No, he's gonna be fine." I mean, like, I was so certain. And then sure enough, like maybe a week later, we drove out that way, and he woke up. So I don't know, but I do remember that dream and being very proud of myself that I knew before everybody else that he was going to be fine. But I look back also, and I'm like, how the heck did I think I was so confident in that too? Like, because I knew something about that dream stood out that was like, no, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, I think kids know things. I think we definitely, and perhaps we a closer connection to other realms when we're children, in our dreams. I think, ultimately, like, yeah, I think if there would be one thing that I wouldn't want, if prophetic dreams, because
Yeah.
that seems kind of like a curse. If I'm being honest, like, I wouldn't want to be
Mhm.
dreaming about what's going to happen in the future.
Well, what's interesting is I wonder how like, again, like, how do you know it's going to come true? Because I've had dreams that stick out, and then like a week, a month, a year later, I get that deja vu feeling. But I very specifically remember the dream that I had at that moment, apart from like deja vu. And this has happened to my mom too. She had a dream she was like pushing a wheelchair, and there was an IV in her hand, and she was like really scared, and then a voice said, "It's going to be fine." And then like a couple weeks later, I had meningitis, and I was like super sick in the hospital, and at some point they were like wheeling me from one room to another, and she had the IV, and she remembered that moment, and I remember she like dropped the IV bag. It's like really dramatic, but that she always remembers that weird prophetic dream. And I don't know, man. And I wonder if that's like some sort of guardian angel speaking to you through dreams. Like, I don't know if that's a thing, but.
Well, I also wonder if it might be your brain running probability simulation. Like,
Maybe. She's like, this kid eats stuff off the floor. She's going to get sick.
Well, I mean that, and I think that there are things that our subconscious picks up during the day that we don't really realize. And so we might have the ability to connect patterns in our sleep, more than we would in our waking life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think so as well. Like, in the realm of dreams, it's a lot easier to make connections that maybe your emotions or your rational state wouldn't allow. Like, especially with like prophetic dreams, if they are bad, maybe in the waking life, it's like, no, that would never happen. But as you dream it all, that pattern shows itself, and you're more free to accept it.
Yeah, I think that's probably what. Or what?
Well, okay, so if the multiverse theory is real, and so let's just say an unlimited amount of universes is like 100, right? Just to quantify it. And in 50 of those scenarios, X happens. Do you think that maybe prophetic dreams are tapping into that other reality where it's happening, and like, because so many different worlds are making it happen?
I mean, it's certainly possible. I wouldn't know, but I mean, that's what I kind of think about your mind running probability games, where it's like maybe you have the ability to tap in all of the information there is to access, and you kind of see like everything all at once. So that's kind of why dreams tend to be really surreal. And most of the time they don't make a whole lot of sense. Is that we have multiple possibilities going along, and it's almost like the things in your dream are constantly shifting and morphing. At least in kind of what I remember in my dreams. But yeah, I think it could be this amalgamation of a collective consciousness or maybe the multiverse. Who knows? I mean, I know that there are a few civilizations that I think they figured it out, and if you guys are ready, we can go through them.
Yeah, this second you've named Throughout the Ages. I'm really digging that title.
Yeah, yeah.
Sounds very
Well, yeah.
different.
I mean, I really would have loved to have done like a really extensive history and of different cultures and stuff. Unfortunately, we're kind of trying ourselves within an hour and a half at the most. So I decided to choose two different cultures, and I think I wanted to do this purposely because it to me it reflects two schools of thought. So I chose for the first we are going to talk about the Aboriginals, sorry, in Australia. Sure. And then we're going to talk about the ancient Greeks because I think that will help us talk about the differences between more modern society and then more ancient ones or more naturalistic ones. So yeah, let's jump right in. Let's see. The dreaming is a common term within the animist creation narrative of the Indigenous Australians for a personal or group creation and what may be understood as the timeless time of formative creation and perpetual creating. Within Aboriginal belief systems, a formative epoch known as the dream time or the dreaming stretches back into the distant past when the creator ancestors known as the first people traveled across the land. Indigenous Australia's oral tradition, and religious values are based upon reverence for the land and the belief in this dream time. The dreaming is at both the ancient time of creation and the present day reality of dreaming. Different languages and cultural groups have their own belief structures. These cultures overlap to a greater or lesser extent and evolve over time. Major ancestral spirits include the rainbow serpent, the Baime, the Durawong, and the Bunjil. Knowledge contained in the dreaming has been passed down through different stories, song lines, dances, and ceremonies, and even today provides a framework of ongoing relationships, kinship responsibilities, and looking after country. Traditional healers, known as Ngangkari, in the western desert areas of Central Australia, were highly respected men and women who not only acted as healers or doctors, but generally also custodians of important dreaming stories. I think I wanted to pick up the Aboriginal culture because they have probably the most dream-centric society and oral tradition. And so I think it's really interesting that they basically refer to every aspect of life as in this sort of dream time, dream space. Whether they're awake or whether they're asleep, they don't really think there being a difference between the two. It's all under this sort of illusory dream time. And I'm wondering what you guys might think about that.
Oh, I love it. I'm thinking back to your question about with, society and if we took more time for dreams and things like that. And I think it's really interesting. They talk about not just dreaming, but the concept that the dreaming stretches back into the distant past when the creator ancestors traveled across the land. And so, it's just interesting because, could it be that they're source dreams from, ancestors centuries ago that are still being remembered today? And if so, that alone is incredible. But also, if that is the case, right, like all that information to be transferred to the present, that would be so interesting to know more about what they talk about and sing about.
Yeah, and I would think that it would be pretty interesting to because it seems though they might be also I don't know how, but implanting information in their dreams or storing perhaps in their dreams. And so it makes me wonder, do you think that they have all similar types of dreams, and is that because they're kind of in the same area?
I can see that, or just a similar sharing of stories that can help construct that dream space.
Good point. Yeah, I think that might be right. Perhaps their stories and their traditions kind of create a condition in which you can dream within the parameters of how they find information or express information or whatnot. Yeah,
Definitely so.
Well,
that's a concept.
And I do like the idea
well, and I
that.
was like,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ayla.
oh no, go for it, Mike. There's a delay again. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. I think the separation between like waking and sleeping time, or the lack thereof, is pretty interesting because it allows for daydreaming. And I know I get more dreamlike states if I'm just laying in bed during the day or letting my mind roam. I do reach kind of, I guess, yeah, like dreamlike thoughts. And I do find it interesting that they don't discern the difference between sleeping or waking.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of probably something we'll be talking about within the ancient Greeks as well. But Ayla, what were you going to say?
Oh, well, I was just reading about the rainbow serpent and kind of a little bit of the lore behind it. And they said that the rainbow serpent is an immortal being and it's creating God in Aboriginal mythology. But they said that the rainbow might suggest of the seasons and the significance of them and water in human life, which I think is kind of interesting if you were to envision a river, for example, with its bends like a snake. And it's just interesting because, like, for the Navajo, we're really scared of snakes. You don't touch them, you don't bother them, you don't look at them. And Nick and I were talking a long time ago just about taboo in different cultures, and how, like, sometimes it's bore out of survival, right? Like, it's in your best interests to leave the snake alone. So let's add a layer of fear to that to make sure you stay away. And so here it's interesting because it's flipped, where you're not afraid of the snake. The snake is a creator. And why is it tethered to water? I don't know. I just find it really interesting. And I'm just like kind of reading a little bit about it. Let's talk about here, with water, grass, and trees began to grow, which woke all the animals, who then followed the rainbow serpent across the land. They were happy on earth, and each lived and gathered food with their own tribe.
Yeah.
Oh, and here it goes. It says, long ago in the dream time, when the earth lay sleeping and nothing moved or grew, lived the rainbow serpent. Which, that's kind of interesting. That makes me think of, like, now the galaxy or something, right? Like the larger rainbow serpent.
Yeah, well, I think there's always, in every sort of culture, the God is always there before the creation of everything. Yeah, I think your analysis is right, though. It probably has to do with rivers, probably has to do with the wet season as well. You have to think of Australia as an incredibly arid area. But, the funny thing about Aboriginals is they've been there for, I want to say 20,000 years, 30,000 years. So they could have very well seen Australia when it was lush. And that would be kind of an interesting thing, because maybe that's why also they keep a hold of their dreams and their, oral traditions so dearly, because they remember in which things were drastically different, and at least in their area.
Yeah, I can see that. And I kind of want to add on Ayla's notion of like these different cultures having different meanings for the same creature, like a serpent or a snake. Like Norse mythology, Jorgamir is like the old, like the huge serpent that Thor has to kill. And then in Aztec belief, you have Quetzalcoatl, which is known as like the plumed snake, the plumed serpent with wings, and it was like one of their most important gods. So
yeah, the serpent has been around for quite some time. It's very much a primordial, and interestingly enough, the I guess the evolutionary biologist's explanation would be that when it's a remnant from when we were arboreal monkeys and snakes were our main predators. So it would have been something that we would have seen with awe and some in some cases terror, and being afraid of them, but also of sheer awe of their splendor and also their power. So yeah, it's interesting, serpents, across our existence, and they've always kind of meant different, also kind of the same thing. Serpents are meant for their intelligence and their kind of their cunning and their wisdom, but also for their danger and also for their beauty of their scales and the way that they move. So yeah, I think it's very interesting. Now I wanted to ask you guys, because we have this concept of Aboriginal dreamland, and I would think that, and this has been in my experience, that environment plays a huge deal on your dreamscape. And I've noticed that my environment definitely plays a big role in my dreams. And I think that it illustrates that, like I tend to have mundane dreams because I'm doing a lot of mundane things most of the time. Now, maybe if I was living out in the forest and having to hunt every day, or, follow the circadian patterns, or, hang out by a waterfall or something, maybe my dreams would change. What do you guys think? Do you think that environment kind of affects dreams, or do you think that it's more just an inner mechanism that doesn't get affected by those things?
I think it affects things, because you're kind of taking in information and then working it out. So yeah, I mean, I would think if you're living in a forest, you would start to dream more about your daily life there, your mundane activities there. It might not be that exciting, but you could be mowing the lawn here or taking a hike there. So I think, environment has a lot to play into it. And even like now we can quote travel with Netflix. Sometimes I've watched like a nature documentary and then like a cheetah in my dream or something like that, which is pretty fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mike, what about you?
Well, like talking about the Aboriginals earlier, like that construction of that dream space. So it makes sense that your physical environment would be another component to that overall dreamscape. Like I know internally, I dream of a lot of cities because I'm here in LA, like it's home.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my sort of natural environment. But there's definitely spaces for forests and other things. But I think you're right. Your physical environment can play a way into your dream environment. And then if you add meaning to that physical environment or different parts of that physical environment, I think that meaning carries over into your dream space in a not always like one-to-one way. It could be a little strange, I think.
Well, yeah, I'm certain. Definitely. It would be very quite strange no matter what, as dreams tend to be. Well, yeah, that's interesting. I think that, you saying that most of your dreams take root in an urban environment because you live in LA, that makes a lot of sense to me. It makes me wonder if you were somebody, say, on the ISS space station spending a year in space, would you dream about being in space, or would you dream about being back on Earth? Because you got to think, like, that is such a foreign environment for a human to be in. Do you dream that you're orbiting Jupiter when you're in the ISS space station, or do you dream that you're on a spacewalk? Like, I would assume that you probably dream about doing the mundane tasks that you have to do there, but I wonder what it would be like to dream that you're in space.
Well, maybe it depends on how you feel during the day. Like if you get homesick and all day you're daydreaming about home and In-N-Out burgers, your dog, then I could totally see about that. Versus like if you're sitting there and thinking about your mission and problems and when to Mars, then I could see you dreaming about that. So I think on some level, your preoccupation in the daytime can influence it too. I think.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right.
Yeah, I would agree, but I think that maybe if you're alone in space, you would get like whatever that internal chatter is. But I think if you're with people, the influence of that chatter might play a more of a role. So
Yeah.
I think that might lead to you dreaming more of Earth-based things, because I think humans will just tend to talk about life, Earth stuff.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely. I definitely agree, and I think I mean, what's interesting to me, and I think there was a philosopher that did this. Ayla, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not, but not exactly this. But the concept of, you have a kid and you raise them kind of hermetically, and see how they turn out, sort of thing. Like with that, was that John Locke or not John Locke?
No, that was freaking Jeremy Bentham. He's like one of the
Yeah.
co-founders of utilitarianism, and he got together with his friend. I can't remember who's who. I know Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill, and there's a third character. And basically, Jeremy and his buddy, they took their kid and like raised him in like a white room and controlled all the input that he had, and they were trying to make him like the perfect utilitarian for society. And then like he grew up, wrote some amazing stuff up until the age of 21 when he went crazy. And now Jeremy Bentham, according to his will, his skeleton has to be brought out to the University of London every year. So yeah, I don't know. Don't get me started on Jeremy Bentham. He's crazy. And if I do the research, like there is some crazy stuff that happened back then, which makes you really question like some of the things that we believe in. But whatever, it's crazy.
Well, I think
I lost the point.
Or I think that's a testament to kind of how interconnected our reality is then, because you have this experiment, if you will, of somebody that's raised with very little sensory input, very little social input, and obviously they go crazy. So to me, that would kind of stand to reason then that reality is more about the interconnectivity than you would actually think. And maybe perhaps dreams are the same, in which that you are able to kind of hop through people's experiences. I know that there was a famous SpongeBob episode once where he decided to get up in the middle of the night and jump in everybody else's dreams, and that's always stuck with me. So
yeah, that would be incredible if you could just insert yourself into people's dreams, either to observe or influence.
Yeah, in the cartoon, they weren't very barging in on people's dreams. They were all pretty mad about it.
Yeah, I don't think you want to walk into my dreams. That'd be
I'd be standing there looking at the red door, like, well, what if we open it? And then all of a sudden, Shadow pops out.
Welcome to the jungle.
Yeah, just try to get you guys out of my dream space just for your own safety.
Or it's just like a million mics and they're all doing mundane things. Like there's just a mic brushing his teeth and like a mic tying his shoes. And
they would all look at each other and just like, Mike.
Yeah. Wait, the dream time from the Aboriginal religion and culture dates back some 65,000 years.
Yeah.
65,000 years.
A long time. Yeah.
65,000 years. Okay. So
I think they're one of the this biological civilizations, in that they're one of the oldest human civilizations that have been kind of untouched for 65,000 years.
But so like if all of their history is passed down through stories and songs, 65,000 years. Okay, so 1,000 is 10 times 100. So imagine each 1,000 is 10 people. So it's 650 people, like the game of telephone, passing information. Is that 6,500? I mean, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of generations. That's breaking my brain. I mean, you think about it, like I could barely tell you 5 stories about my grandma from my dad's side, much less his, my great grandma, much less my great great grandma. I just,
right. And
wow.
they can remember, great, great,
65,000 years ago.
Yeah, it's gnarly. That oral history,
They gotta
man.
say 600 greats before they can get to their grandma.
Well, yeah, and then imagine some random guy does something dumb, and then 300 people have to talk about it for generations, and
right, and it
that's the
lasts
one
for
person.
10,000 years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they do that, if they're probably more evolved than that, but it just, gosh, that's mind-boggling.
I wonder too.
And it says that. Okay.
I'm sorry. I wonder what the impact of European writing, written history, has had on our ability to even remember our dreams as well. Because there's that notion of keeping, a dream journal, whereas more oral history cultures like the Aborigines, or I even think the Iroquois Confederacy. If you, even there, they had detailed oral maps of the locations that they lived in, and could tell anyone how to get anywhere without the needing of any writing tools or anything like that.
Oh man, don't get me started. Think about the last phone number you remembered. I don't even know Nick's phone number. And I mean, my memory is not good. And so, yeah, I mean, dude, all the stuff that you have to remember, especially if you're a wise person and you have I don't know, 300, I mean, you have 65,000 years worth of songs and anecdotes. I mean, how do you hold that much information? I'm sure some of it's okay, these are the key things to remember, but even still, you keep amending and augmenting and adding. That's really mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think.
Well, but I think that the point of oral tradition is that you don't really keep adding all that much, right? You kind of repeat the same stories without very much
Changing. Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Because that's kind of the issue with written tradition, is that it gets translated from language to language and the meanings get lost. But oral tradition can actually stick around much longer because they repeat the same songs. And if you can teach your history through songs, Ayla, I know you guys have lots of songs about your own culture.
All the songs.
If you're able to teach, if those songs are meaning something and they're telling a story, then those are your mythologies. And
yeah. Well, and it gets crazier too, because we have sand paintings, and I remember my brother, he studied with a road runner for a while, and he was trying to teach him sand painting, but he said you have to be really careful. You can't just do it and doodle it, because if you do it wrong, you're going to harm yourself because you're not doing it right. So
right.
I guess you're right. They're very specific, and there is a young man, he's learning the different songs and ceremonies, and he said, it's really tough because there's certain ceremonies you can only sing and do in the wintertime. But there's maybe only 4 families that need that specific ceremony. So you need to make sure that you can observe and watch, but you can't record. You have to remember just having seen it 4 times. And it's not going to be perfect. So you're talking 10 years, maybe 40 times. And then you think 20 years, maybe 80 times. That's when you finally get it. But yeah, I mean, the level of detail that you have to pass on, oh my gosh. And let's think about how that changes your brain too, because I know for myself, I get lazy in terms of remembering because I have Google, I have notes, I've got Post-its. But if I were required to kind of hold all that information in my head, I find it interesting, because I feel like the more freedom your mind has and it doesn't have to hold, it can kind of spin out a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Oh, definitely. So
yeah,
I think too, just the complexity of our society removes the ability to practice any sort of, or hinders the practice of oral tradition, because I don't know, you got to remember how to do taxes, you got to remember how to fill out a check to pay rent. You can't focus exactly in on the tradition or the ceremonies, the rituals, etc. you're just kind of you're forced in our own rituals, which are much more writing based and capitalistic based, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and like your sole job isn't to remember the songs of your people.
That's true.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, the modernity of the lifestyle we live is that and I think this goes back to our previous question about, is there something that's lost when you're not living as naturalistic of a lifestyle as far as your dreams are concerned? And I think that there possibly could be, because, I just have a feeling that if you're spending more time out and more time in the natural world, you likely would be communicating with gods. Into that when we get to the Greek ideas, but you would likely be in commune much more with nature, and therefore perhaps receiving more of the subtle messages nature gives us that we don't really understand.
I think that's totally accurate. I mean, just thinking about how my first inclination was, oh, well, 65,000 years, you're just going to keep adding to it. But no, it's much more simpler than that. And I think that the tendency when you are in this modern active that we're in is to just complicate things. Oh, there's only 7 major plot lines. Okay, let me write another one, and I'm going to do it different because this, and this, and I don't know. That's something to ponder, because I think that we laud ourselves as expanding human knowledge, but are we really knowledge, or are we just complicating knowledge?
Right.
I don't know, And I always think about that, because I always want to write a book, always think about it, but then I just ask myself, like, what do I want to contribute? What hasn't been, what needs to be said? Is this an original thought? And more often than not, when I start to try and write it, I'm like, nah, that's not that good, which could just be criticism. But I think it gets at the heart of, like, somehow things that are more organic and simplified tend to be more pure or more resonating, because, we're natural beings. And I think we kind of resonate with things that are, I don't know, older or simpler or more nature born or older.
Yeah. Like, there's the idea that people live their whole lives to achieve one original thought, that everything has been, thought of before, which would mean that all we're doing is really making things more complex. And whether or not they need to be complex, who knows, really,
Yeah. Well, and I find it interesting too, because the idea of the written word, did people who have oral traditions, it's not like they were like, oh, I can't make the printing press, so I'm not gonna go there, or did they clue into something that was kind of like, it's not about keeping, it's like you have these fundamental things and we don't need to keep the rest, which is a very, like, decluttering way to think about it in terms of preserving thought.
Well, it's just we decided that we had an external hard drive, right? I mean, the concept is that we created a writing system, and we decided to put down information instead of keeping it in our heads. And then we realized that we can go through much more information if we record it and basically don't keep it in our brains and don't waste the hard drive space.
Yep.
So I think that for what it's worth, yes, Aboriginal cultures can repeat the same songs that they have been singing for the past 65,000 years, but I would wonder how much more they have, and perhaps that's why they live such naturalistic lives, is that they can't really integrate into a more modernized system because their brains just don't even work that way. Their brains
don't want
even
to.
well, yeah. Well, I don't blame them. I'm not saying that they should, but I'm just saying, like, they probably are physically incapable of actually even doing that, because the way their society structured, the way their communities are structured, the way their tradition is so vastly different from what you might call a Western society. So yeah, I think
that
it's Interesting.
say I'm going to break 65,000 years of tradition. I'm going to go do this thing over here.
Yeah, probably upon. All right, let's get through this because we are already past an hour, folks. So, yeah, let's
Time
see.
flies.
Time does fly.
Sorry.
All right. So we're going to get down to ancient Greece. Let's see. I have very much. Do not. Let's see. Don't. Okay. Sorry about that, folks.
Here, sorry, you deleted something.
Yeah, that's okay. Just don't highlight while I'm reading. Thank you.
Sorry.
All right. So let's see. The ancient Greeks shared their beliefs with the Egyptians on how to interpret good and bad dreams and the idea of incubating dreams. Morpheus, the god of dreams, hey, call back to our last episode, also sent warnings and prophecies to those who shrines and temples. The earliest Greek beliefs about dreams were that their gods visited the dreamers, where they entered through a keyhole, exiting the same way after the divine message was. Antiphon wrote the first known Greek book on dreams in the 5th century BC. In that century, other cultures influenced Greeks to develop the belief that souls left the sleeping body. Hippocrates had a simple dream theory. During the day, the receives images, and during the night, it produces images. The Greek philosopher believed that dreams cause physiological activity. He thought dreams could analyze illness and predict disease. Marcus Attilius Cicero, for his part, believed that all dreams are by thoughts and conversations a dreamer had during the preceding days. So we kind of get into more of the westernized style of understanding dreams, or at least the way we accept dreams. Kind of interesting how we took the romance out of dreams pretty quickly with all of the philosophy and the you know nerd alert thinking. It's like you have the Aboriginals who are like, we live in a walking dream and this whole place is an illusion. And then you have the Greeks that are like, nah, you saw some things during the day and you probably just thought of them at nighttime.
Always with the Greeks to do that.
Yeah, very unromantic. So that said, and
I would say Aristotle on.
What's that?
Well, because Plato, I would say maybe Aristotle on, because Plato, his allegory of the cave is still kind of groovy,
Yeah, well, I would liken that to maybe more of the illusory theory that we're going to do in just a second. But I would agree with you, yes. But I wanted to ask, and I think we've already kind of contacted this or touched upon this, is that have you ever solved the dream or solved the problem in your dreams in your waking life? And I know that Mike had talked about how taking nap helps him sometimes process coding decisions. But Mike, has there been other times in which that's happened for you?
Yeah. I'm gonna sound so bad. Suppose the problem is a romantic relationship. I've definitely dreamed of the solution of going, maybe it's the anxiety filled part of me, but going through the steps of how to break up with somebody, or presenting that solution of a interpersonal relationship, whatever that problem be, it's presented itself to me in that way as well.
Yeah, and I think that that's a valid point because problems aren't just exactly work related or puzzle related. They can be interpersonal for sure, and the concept of sleeping on it, right? If you have to make a big decision, you should always sleep on it, and that's kind of rooted in this understanding that we're processing more information while we sleep than we maybe understand or can quantify.
Definitely agree.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And ask very briefly, but you guys real quick, but do you think there is a reason that gods were so prominent in ancient dreams? And I mean, because I can't for the life of me remember a time where I dreamt that God spoke to me. But I mean, I've had alien dreams before. Maybe that's kind of similar. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think what's funny is they talk about was it Morpheus said the gods sent those warnings and prophecies to those who slept at shrines and temples. So I think that's kind of funny, talking about like environment that you mentioned earlier, Nick. But then also, you know, I know that the Greeks, they had a lot of gods, and they definitely felt like the gods were very involved in the humans' lives. So I wonder if again that's too like the just your society and upbringing. Yeah, like, you know, they didn't have Jerry Springer, so they got to make up these crazy gods that are like really mean and want to do stuff to them, make them go do things and tell them crazy things.
Oh, that's a
So,
good point. Yeah. And I also think that, you know, what you're mentioning, this concept of like societies having closer relationships with the gods, like the ancient Greeks, like Ayla said, they walked them, they were constantly interacting with them. And so obviously, with those stories being passed around in the culture and the society, you would definitely have more dreams within the gods. But then it's kind of like a question of what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? So it's like, are these people dreaming of the gods and then creating a society in which the gods are always around them, or are a society in which the gods are always around them and then subsequently dreaming about the gods? Mike, what do you think?
So can I go kind of like all gas on this?
Sure.
So I do feel like I do feel like at some points that I will feel like I'm communicating with some sort of like Greek gods, like that whole red door dream and these sorts of ideas that started to come around. It was at the time when I was discovering ancient Greek philosophy. And if I kind of fit this into a frequency-based worldview, I can see the gods as definitely like some sort of upper or lower dimensional beings that communicate with you in your dream, like that access that same wavelength. And so if you're unaware of them, if your society is unaware of them, then they may not communicate with you, or you may not communicate with them. And even if it's just as simple as your subconscious making these constructs known as gods, and you're kind of giving them these personality traits, they could be very powerful tools in achieving goals in life. So
Certainly.
I do feel like at least I have some sort of communication with some sort of otherworldly beings, even if I'm just making it up in my head in my dream state.
Well, and I think it's interesting that you make that distinction, because it doesn't really matter, you know. Like if you are making it up in your head, it's not any less real. You know, like the dream is still there and it still sticks with you. And so, you know, maybe that is what the concept of the gods are in reality. After all, is that they do intangibly exist on this sort of realm in which we have to pour our belief into that in order to bring it life. Maybe something like that. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. Yeah,
I would agree. Like I feel like, especially with Dionysus and like my relationship with drinking, there are times when I will pull inspiration to write something that sounds very like similar to things I've read in college, like very Greek type things, but it is like this god of wine that I'm kind of, I don't want to say channeling, but channeling. Yeah, that's the proper word, through the use of this ritualistic, or through the ritual use of alcohol or wine.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you like doing that, you should really look into Saturnalias, man. That was the Greeks' thing for the god Dionysus. He loved his Saturnalias, and they were wild parties. So,
there's nothing like a wild party.
That's right. Hedonism and debauchery galore. Ayla, is there anything you want to add before we move on to a little bit of the philosophical Yeah.
No, I think I'm good. I think, you guys did it pretty well. And yeah, I mean, I I don't know. I mean, I know my mom, she definitely said there's a recurring voice that's been in her dreams since she was a girl. Um, and I remember she would be really adamant that I would hear like the same kind of like spirit guide, but I've never had anybody like talk to me in my dream and like kind of like be a voice of God or whatnot. So I don't know. I know people have those experiences, but I haven't. So I don't know. It's interesting. I should start reading
And
more about Greek gods and gods in general and be like, come at me.
Be careful. Dionysus
yeah,
is
you may not want to.
Dionysus,
Yeah.
this guy into a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I've had many experiences with extraterrestrial encounters, but we'll have to save that for another episode, folks. We'll be doing a part 2 of this series in which we can get a little bit deeper into our dreams. But jump into a little bit of the philosophy, and this is really actually just we're going to skim over this because really we covered in our last episode about the simulation theory. So some philosophers have concluded that we think that what we think of the real world could be or is an illusion. The idea known as skeptical hypothesis about ontology. That's very formal. The recorded mention of this idea was by Zhuang Ji, if you guys remember him and his butterfly dream in our last podcast. And it helped become the foundation for the dream argument. The dream argument is the postulation that the act of dreaming provides preliminary evidence that the senses we trust to distinguish reality from illusion should not be fully trusted. And therefore, any state that is dependent on our senses should at the very least, be carefully examined and rigorously tested to determine whether it is in fact reality. While one dreams, one does not normally realize one is dreaming. On more rare occasions, the dream may be contained inside another dream, with the very act of realizing that one is dreaming itself being only a dream that one is not aware of having. This has led philosophers to wonder whether it is possible for one ever to be certain at any given point in time that one is not in fact dreaming, and whether indeed it could be possible for one to remain in a perpetual dream state and never experience the reality of wakefulness at all. Ooh, that's kind of a subject, right? Mm-hmm. Could we be dreaming right now, guys?
Totally.
I would be sad. My dreams are so unimaginative.
Man, join the club, dude. I don't think I've had a surreal dream in ages.
Well, here we go. We could also say that what one person could be listening to this right now, are you dreaming? And this conversation right now.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's very possible. Well, on a little bit less silly note, have you guys ever realized that you were dreaming? Like, have you ever been in a dream and been like, oh, this is a dream?
I wish. I've always wanted to be able to kind of do the lucid dreaming thing, but I just can't. I never know.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm more of a daydreamer and not much of a lucid dreamer. All of my night dreams are just sort of like I'm stuck in that reality, unaware of other realities. Right.
Yeah, I think the problem with my dreams is that I haven't had a surreal dream in ages because my brain, anytime things get a little hinky in my dreams, automatically goes, hey, no, this is a dream, and I wake up. So I don't even allow myself to have like surreal dreams anymore. I really need to curb that behavior. But there would be like the concept of when I was talking about like if I was getting into a fight in a dream and I kept trying to hit the person, I'm just glancing them very softly. At some point I'd be like, okay, this got to be a dream. This doesn't make any sense.
Well, and you're a really light sleeper too. Like I remember trying to get you to move off of something, and I was like, "You're on my pillow," and I just whispered it, and you were dead asleep, and you lifted your arm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I sleep with one eye open most of the time, but I've had some pretty crazy deep dreams before. Again, that'll be next episode, guys. I'm sorry to tease you like that, but you're just gonna have to stay tuned, okay? Now before we wrap this up, I wanted to get into the Hall study because I found this really interesting, and it's one of the first mass studies of dreams. And so it's one of the more famous ones as well. And so this is kind of a rundown of it. And then it give you a little bit of correlation between all of the people that were studied in their dreams and certain things that we all kind of touch upon when we dream, which is kind of cool. And then we can discuss and wrap up after I'm done. So let's jump right into it. The Hall study. From the 1940s to 1985, Calvin S. Hall collected more than 50,000 dream reports at Western Reserve University. In 1966, Hall and Van de Castle, that's an awesome name, published the content analysis of dreams, in which they outlined a coding study 1,000 dream reports from college students. Results indicated that participants from varying parts of the world demonstrated similarities in their dream. And now I'm going to read to you guys a couple of these similarities, and then we can discuss afterwards. So let's see, visuals. So visuals, the visual in dreams is highly phantasmagorical. That's a great word. That is, different locations and objects continuously blend into each other. The visuals, including locations, characters, people, objects, artifacts, are generally reflective of a person's memories and experience. But conversations can take on highly exaggerated and bizarre forms. Some dreams may even tell elaborate stories where the dreamer enters entirely new, complex worlds and awakes with ideas, thoughts, and feelings never experienced prior to the dream. People who are blind from birth do not have visual dreams. Their dream contents are related to other senses like hearing, touch, smell, and taste, whichever since birth. I thought that was very interesting too. We'll come back to that. But next one would be emotions. In the Hall study, the most common emotion experienced in dreams was anxiety. Other emotions include abandonment, anger, fear, joy, and happiness. Negative emotions were much more commonplace than positive ones, which is quite interesting. The next one would be sexual themes. Let's get our Freud on. The Hall data analysis shows that sexual dreams occur no more than 10% of the time and are more prevalent in young to mid-teens. Another study shows that 8% of both men and women's dreams have sexual content. So actually a lot less than we would suspect. I guess we're pretty wholesome. Let's see, the final criteria would be, and I thought this was really fascinating, color versus black and white. So a small minority say that they dream only in black and white. And a 2000 study by a researcher at the University of Dundee found that people who were only exposed to black and white televisions and films in childhood repeatedly dreamed in black and white about 20% of the time. Now that tripped me the heck out because I was just thinking about that, like, so you're basically dreaming like, Leave It Beaver, where it's like just all black and white and everybody's got a nice car. And I don't know, like that, what a trip that must be.
Well, that's so funny because I remember prior to 2008, people just saying like, "Oh, did you dream in color?" And you'd be like, "Yeah." And then they're like, "Did you?" And then they would pull out this fact that everyone dreams in black and white. But maybe they were just studying the boomers, man. Like, we didn't have any younger folk in the mix.
I think that's probably a relic of the black and white TV for sure.
But what does that say about like our television habits?
Right.
Like, does the TV trigger some sort of internal mechanism that dreams do as well?
Well, then we would be
Whoa.
getting into hypnosis and Project Mockingbird, Mike. Let's not get into that right now.
Oh, I have some YouTube videos we could pull up.
Yeah, no, but that's a very good point, little Mike. Just because
Yeah.
you're watching a black and white television doesn't mean you didn't go to the park and see
Right.
like green grass and blue skies.
Yeah,
Oh
you
my
weren't
God,
living in black and white, which is just crazy. But yeah, so that
I
kind of
glossed all
does.
the way over that. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well,
Ooh.
definitely emphasizes the power of television then for sure. And
Mm.
we should be probably more aware of that. But what I thought also was
Yep.
fascinating was the blind bit. The people who are born blind, they don't have visual dreams. So what must that be like? I mean, whew.
That would be so strange.
Like you would dream of smells and you would dream of touching things.
There's no black or white. There's just other sense. I can't. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around. Yeah.
Totally.
Muddled and yeah.
Well,
But
because dreams are so visual.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting is they talk about like feeling also, like all the negative emotions. So I wonder if like dreaming is also just experiencing. I just think that'd be so fascinating to have a dream absent of visual cues because like, yeah, I just feel like you might feel more or I don't know.
Well, and how much of
don't
that is
know.
connected to the collective consciousness? Because I mean, I think that if we look at what we've been talking about in the CIA documents and how the brain is basically a little mini hologram projector that creates its own reality. If you have a population of people that are traumatized and constantly thinking about low vibrational things, does that create a dream space in which everybody else dreams the same things?
I think it would definitely have an impact on the collective.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, like the Greek thing, you know, if you're thinking you can talk to gods, you dream that you can talk to gods. Or the environment thing, you know, you see rivers and natural life, you're gonna dream that kind of stuff. But you know what's interesting? I bought a Fitbit like a month ago, and I was wearing it to sleep, and they have a whole sleep tracker, which is really weird. It can tell you when you've been restless and for how long. It can tell you when you're in REM and when you're in deep sleep versus light sleep. And I mean, you know, I would think that I would go to bed at like wake up at 6. That's a solid amount of sleep. And then I'd find out I was awake for 3 hours.
Yeah.
What was I doing?
You don't really even know it.
I don't know. And then like there were some nights I didn't get any REM sleep at all. So I did some research and it was saying how like actually our country and I don't know about in the world, but at least for those of us that are like on screens all the time, that actually inhibits your REM sleep. And I believe you dream, right? Like when you're coming in and out of REM or something, or there's something about that.
Well, they also they say you shouldn't look at a screen an hour before you go to bed because it definitely messes your sleep patterns up. And particularly computer screens and phone screens because they have so much blue light to them. It messes your circadian rhythm up. So you'll have a harder time sleeping. You'll have a harder time getting into that REM sleep. So yeah, they definitely recommend that at least an hour before you go to bed, like read a book or do something that's not in front of a screen and you'll actually sleep a lot better.
I think sexy thoughts, apparently. Sheesh. 8%.
Need to raise that number a bit.
Yeah.
I know. All right, homework assignment. What was that? Was it Homer where he was trying like not to cheat on Marge, and so he's like, think on sexy thoughts, think on sexy thoughts.
I think so.
The power of the mind, you know. It's get to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, do we have any final thoughts we wanted to leave? I think, as I said, we're going to have to do a round 2. And I'll explain on what round 2 is before or after we do our little wrap up here. Anything else we wanted to say before we go, guys?
I do want to touch on the blind dreamscape. Maybe it's an IO issue. Maybe they're getting all the same stuff that we get in our dreams, but the lack of any sort of visual processing unit makes them unable to to actually do that, to actually process visual information.
Oof. I mean, that would just be really rough. I just don't know how enjoyable dreams can be if you can't see anything.
Right?
I mean, it just must be so. That's all. And I mean, the idea that they could smell in dreams, I don't think I've ever smelled in my dreams. Have you?
Mm-mm.
No.
I don't. Not that I
No.
would remember. But you know, it's interesting. Well, but when you think about like blindness, right? Like you have the optics, so you could have the eyeball that's like not there or it doesn't work. And then you have the brain, you know, like you could have visual defects, I guess, or you know, like impairments, but then like maybe your brain could still be hardwired to receive input or something. I don't know. I just yeah, but I think what we're saying, Mike, is interesting because there's like something about that because yeah, I mean, like I mean, you could still imagine, but I don't know.
Not if you were born blind, you would have no reference. Like Mike was saying, there's no processor. So if you've never seen anything,
Oh,
there's nothing to imagine.
but you know, like the touching of the face, you know, like you can sense of like shape maybe, but I wonder if that
Yeah.
would just be tactile. I don't know.
I mean, I would probably say it's more tactile than anything. But then we get into things like, you know, people are click and kind of see things through their sonar. I mean, I know there was a guy that's pretty famous for being able to ride a bike blind because he can click and the clicking bounces off and he can kind of use it as a sonar.
That's so cool.
It's
Oh my
pretty
gosh.
incredible. Yeah.
Some daredevil
That's
stuff.
really incredible.
Yeah. We'll have to touch on some sort of like extra sensory perception episode for sure where we can get in that concept.
Mhm.
But yeah, so thank you guys for listening. This was, oh yeah, nice. 1 hour and a half. Perfect timing, guys. So thank you very much for listening. Please leave us a comment. Please like, subscribe if you could. We would really appreciate it. You know, we're to grow and we hope that we're giving you guys good content. And please let us know. Give us your feedback. We will respond. As I said, we're very small. And one of the benefits of a small creator is that you can actually contact them and they'll reach out to you back. So please let us know what you guys think. Let us know what your answers are to some of these questions. And please stay tuned for the next episode we're going to have to do on dreams. And I'll just give you a little bit of a teaser here. Part 2 is going to concern dream interpretation. We're going to talk about lucid dreaming. We're going to talk about recalls. We're going to talk about deja vu. We're going to talk about Mike's favorite subject, daydreaming. We're going to talk about nightmares. We're going to talk about theta waves. Might talk about some hypnagogia. Like, it's going to get real, guys. Okay. We might actually do a part 3 because this is just such a dense subject. So please stay tuned. And we really, really appreciate you guys listening. Please check us out, Thinkering.space, Thinkering Talks on the Facebook page, Thinkering Talks on the YouTube channel, Exofathom on the Facebook page, Exofathom on the YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for listening. Stay out there, all you cognonauts, and we will catch you on the next one. And before we go, I want to thank my awesome and co-hosts, Ayla and Mike. Thank you guys very much for being here. I almost forgot, and I cannot forget thanking you guys.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's always a blast.
Thank you for hosting.
Definitely. Everybody have a great night, and we will catch you on the next one. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Peace.